All right, everybody, welcome back to SuperCon 2020. My cat with me today. To my left, Garrett Walls and
Hello.
Alex Perello, and I am Marvin from Wednesday Comics. We are here today with Ron Marz, legend, and we just announced today, time of this recording, but by the time you're seeing this, you know this news for about a month, part of DC's Endless Winter. Actually, I would say you and Andy Lanning looks like you're the architects of this whole thing, right?
We like that. We like architects.
Because you're writing your issues, Justice League, to start it off, but you also are kind of involved in all of it, right?
Yeah, well, Andy and I are writing everything. When we started to talk to DC about this, they said, well, ultimately, what kind of bandwidth do you guys have? Can you, how much of this can you do? And we're just like, well, it's 9 issues. If if you guys are comfortable with it, we'll do it all. So that was the plan, and it was basically turning in a script a week for 9 weeks. And we're on schedule. We're working on the last 2 right now. So barring acts of God, wildfires, global catastrophe, pandemics, that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on right now.
And that's all going to pump out in December. I think I saw too. Like, that's amazing that you're going to get.
Yeah, the whole thing comes out in December. So I believe the first issue is the first week of December, the last issue is the last week of December, and then everything in between is sort of 2 or 3 issues per week. And obviously that means you got to hit all your deadlines. Nothing can ship out of order. Nothing can slip a week. So I think we started early enough on it that everything's kind of fallen into place.
So we had spoken to Phil Hester, and he kind of described the event as DC likes to do big blockbuster events, which obviously is death metal right now, and then they like to do smaller events, which are like breathers. And that's kind of how he described this Endless Winter, which was like it's like you said, all in December. It's 9 issues. You can get all of it at once. How would you feel? How do you describe this kind of event compared to like stuff in the past?
It's it's certainly more contained than something like death metal. Obviously, yeah. Death metal has got a bunch of spin-offs, and it goes through a bunch of different issues, and it's got a big spine story that goes with it. This is more contained. If 9 issues over the course of a month is contained. So really, we kind of followed the model that Andy had used, that Andy Lanning, who's co-writing it with me, had used for some of the Marvel crossovers that they did, tied into Guardians of the Galaxy. So that meant sort of a bookend on either end of the story, an opening chapter and a final chapter. That were oversized. So in our case, the first and last issues are oversized. And then all the issues in between that run through the individual issues of either a series or like the Superman issue is a separate issue, but it's a Superman issue that Phil is drawing. The Teen Titans issue, the Teen Titans run has come to an end. So this is a sort of Teen Titans one-off, but with the same team and in the same continuity that the regular series was, so that more things can come out of the Teen Titans franchise in 2021.
Now, I had read that from what came out today that Andy was brought aboard of this, and then he called you up. You guys had been working together prior at a private kind of business, and then started this event. So when you guys get together and DC tells you like, hey, do you want to do this? Like, the genesis of starting an event like this, where do your ideas first start coming from? I know a lot of it's from Norse mythology, correct?
Yeah, we ripped off Norse mythology. Steal from the best.
Hey, everybody does. So I mean,
so the way it had worked out is Andy had been working for like the last 5 or 7 years at a place called Magic Leap, which is an augmented reality company that does amazing stuff, and I did quite a bit of work for them too, through Andy bringing me in, both comics and different kinds of projects. And they had to downsize in the pandemic and ended up laying off like 60% of their workforce, including Andy. So Andy found himself, hey, let's do some comics again. So Andy called me, and we've co-written stuff before. We co-written stuff at Marvel. We co-wrote a lot of stuff at Magic Leap. And it's a very comfortable partnership We have a lot of the same storytelling, sensibilities, and a lot of the same influences too. Andy had this idea when DC called him and said, "Hey, we're looking for an event for the winter.
Yeah.
Do you have anything?" And Andy had this idea that turned into Endless Winter because of the timing, and so it's sort of all built from that, and it evolved. Like any large scale project you do, it evolves over the course of it. We had some different characters involved in the beginning, and for one reason or another, they weren't available. It had a slightly different structure initially, but when you do this kind of project, you have to be open to, okay, well, we thought we were going to go here, but now we're going to go over here, and the overall gist of the story is the same. It's the same overall spine that Andy came up with, and then I chipped in on. But you add different elements, and Viking Prince is in it because I said, Viking Prince is kind of cool. Why don't we do that? And so it's primarily a Justice League story, but it goes through some of the solo titles like Superman and Aquaman, Flash, and then Teen Titans, Justice League Dark. And we tried to maintain the flavor of all of those individual issues while making sure that the overall story sort of got threaded through everything. But hopefully the Superman issue feels like a Superman issue, and the Flash issue feels like a Flash issue. Justice League Dark is very much a Justice League Dark issue, doing kind of supernatural stuff. So the feel of all the individual issues should be pretty much what readers expect them to be. But there's this big overall Justice League story that kind of unfolds through all of it.
And so when you're doing that, and I know obviously you've had a lot of chances to work with these kind of characters in the past, but like when you come to an event that has to be 9 issues, really, like you said, really the flavor of those characters, did you go into it being like falling in love with some characters that you didn't start with falling in love with, or did you like enjoy writing somebody more than you do?
I liked all of it, frankly. I mean, all of it is fun. I mean, this is shocking superhero comic, right? So I think we had a ball with everything. For me, I really enjoyed the Superman issue because I'm a big Superman guy, and being able to work with Phil on it was great. He is in fact drawing as we speak. Better be drawing as we speak. And I guess I should say, fellow SuperCon guest Phil Hester is drawing as we speak. But some of the other stuff that I wasn't exactly sure, how we were going to hit the mark, like the Aquaman issue I really had a good time doing that one. And I like Aquaman, but he's never been like Batman or Superman or Green Lantern for me, characters that I have a sort of an innate affection for. Aquaman's just always been, oh yeah, he's cool, but I don't know what I'd do with him. Yeah. And this turned into, a really fun Aquaman story. And I guess I can say, like, because he's been seen on covers now, that Swamp Thing being involved in it.
He's like, I saw some of those covers and like him with that like wooden cloak. Like I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited for this event. Like it just looks
I don't want to give away too much of what is going on, but getting to have Swamp Thing in the story was an absolute treat. Getting to do what evolved into a Black Adam solo special was really cool, because he's not like any of the other characters that we're dealing with here. He's not a hero, but he's not exactly a villain. He's somewhere in between, and he's doing stuff for his own purposes, and sort of adhering to his own code. So that's an interesting story that we wrote, because we've been doing heroes doing heroic things, heroes doing selfless things. He's not doing selfless things. He's doing things that he has a specific agenda.
Which is a great time to be writing Black Adam because, I mean, like his movie should be coming out next year. I'm not sure, I mean, how everything's working out with COVID, but he's a character definitely on the cusp of like hitting the mainstream, or at least we hope so. He might be like, that might be his introduction to a lot of people to that character for the first time.
Yeah, we tried to keep that in mind when we were plotting out the issue, is that, okay, maybe not everybody who comes to this is going to know who this guy is. And part of the story is that Black Adam is in a flashback sequence that runs through all of the issues. So the seeds of the story are planted in the 10th century. That's how we have Viking Prince as part of the story. So it very much, yes, we pulled from Norse mythology for this story. So we start in the 10th century in Scandinavia.
Mm-hmm.
And Black Adam is there, and Hippolyta is there, and Swamp Thing is there, and Viking Prince. So that's kind of where the story begins, and we unfold that storyline through the issues as we're telling what is happening currently. So there's a lot of juxtaposition of what happened in the past to what's happening in the present, and the way warriors attack a problem in the past and the way heroes attack a problem in the present. So yes, it's big fun superhero, and the planet's frozen and there's ice monsters running around. So yeah, that's all the top level stuff. But underneath it all is, there's some stuff about, kind of learning from your mistakes in the past and how you serve and protect, right? How you,
Mm-hmm.
You can't just be a warrior sometimes. Sometimes the answer is something other than being a warrior. And obviously the sense of isolation that you get from a blizzard and from this sort of epic winter event is also reflecting somewhat in how we're all living our lives now.
Yeah, which I mean, I think you really get that sense from those covers, at least what it released today. The single character covers, and around them is just like the abyss of the snow. It really is a nice way to tie in kind of current events without being too like on the nose about it. I feel like
we're trying to be, all that stuff is in there. We're not being heavy-handed about it, but I think it's there for the reading if you want it to be. So we're trying to, yes, tell a big superhero story, but also touch upon those sorts of things and touch upon what everybody's going through right now. So the story isn't just from the point of view of Superman and Batman running around fighting ice monsters. It's also from the point of view of regular people and how they're dealing with this sudden change in their lives.
Now, you said 9 issues all coming out in December, and so you really had to make sure you were on time with getting this done. But there's you and Andy working together as collaborators on this project. How does that process work with the two of you, like trying to stay on the path to get these done by December?
Well, Andy just does whatever I tell him.
He doesn't sleep. You just go, okay, do this.
No, it's like I said, we have very similar storytelling sensibilities. We've worked together before, and I've been really good friends with Andy for 20 years. So all of that helps, but in a very sort of logistical sense, I'm in upstate New York, Andy's in London, so and DC is in LA, right? So when you sort of map that out, Andy's up while I'm still sleeping and he's working on stuff. And when I get to my desk and I've got my Death Wish coffee in me and I get ambulatory,
mm-hmm.
We get on a Skype call and kick stuff around and open a Google Doc that we're both in at the same time. And so we have sort of that mid part of the day where we're both working on the thing and talking through story issues and all that. And then, eventually, for some reason, Andy likes to go to sleep. So while he crashes out like midnight UK time, I stay up and I'm working on stuff until sometimes 2 a.m. And then an hour or two later, Andy's out of bed and he starts working on the stuff again. And while all that's going on, DC's 3 hours behind me on the West Coast. So when we have to have Skype calls and meetings on how the whole thing is falling together, and if we need to make revisions. We sort of do that like in the middle of so their morning, the middle of my day, and Andy's early evening. So I don't know how the world functioned without Zoom and Skype previously.
Which I was going to say, perfect time to have that kind of relationship in comics. Like,
yeah, well, now I was going to say, like, I know what like every DC editor's home looks like now, because everybody's working from home. It's and I think we're getting used to it. I think we're sort of getting to the point where this was my life, and apparently I've been quarantined for like 30 years. So this was my life in general.
Yeah.
But obviously it's, when you're used to being in the office, like those guys are, this is a whole different thing. And, it's a lot, it just takes more time to deal with the world this way because, you're used to walking out of your office and going 2 doors down to somebody else's cubicle or office and saying, hey, can we borrow Supergirl for a couple of panels in the Justice League issue? And you get a yes or a no. Now it's like you have to send an email chain or get on a Zoom call. It's an adjustment, but it still works. I'm really thankful for all of the editors that we're working with, because the books are via a number of different editors with Alex Carr and Andrea Shea sort of riding herd over the whole thing as a whole. Just keeping all the ducks in a row, and getting all the artists all of the reference that they need, and making sure, like, there's a scene that Phil has to draw, which is probably among the first pages he's drawing right now, where we need a specific location that he needs to draw because somebody else that's drawing another issue needs to draw that location. And even though it's like a 2-page sequence, Phil's got to establish it so the other dude can draw it and have it match instead of having it like look completely different. So that's the behind the curtain stuff that you don't generally hear about. But that's the little editorial elves make sure that all of that stuff goes off seamlessly.
Which, to that point, we also had, me and Garrett were talking beforehand, that it seems like DC's other event has a lot of issues coming out that month. So, like, how does that work out with like 2 events kind of going on at the same time? Like, do you kind of just have to ignore that and be like, let's do our thing?
We're doing our thing and they're doing their thing. It's this might come as a shock, but all of these are made up stories. So sometimes you just got to go, well, I guess these happened, somewhere around the same time, but look,
ignore the time. Yeah. Well, I mean, one of them is happening in like you said, in the 10th century. So.
Yeah. I mean, look, Batman's been, 35 years old for 80 years. Like, don't think about it too much. You hurt your brain.
I wanted to. I noticed when you had pointed to your office. Obviously, a huge creator that's been on Green Lantern, and we were talking about Black Adam on the cusp of breaking it with the mainstream. Green Lantern's a character. Obviously, they've tried in the past, but now it's getting its own kind of series on HBO Max. They're trying to do it as a television series and try to do a big budget. What are your thoughts on that? Like, how would you present Green Lantern to the mainstream and that kind of media?
There's a lot of ways to skin that cat. It's certainly maybe not the way they already tried to skin it, because it just it didn't quite land. I think Green Lantern is just an amazing franchise. It's really not like very many other comic franchises, because you can do Earthbound superhero stuff. You can do sort of outer space crazy cosmic stuff, which is like what Grant and Liam Sharp are doing right now. Or you can do sort of outer space buddy cop stuff, which sounds like what maybe the HBO series is going to be. There's such a wide range of stories. You can do a science fiction police procedural with this.
Yeah.
And Lord knows that television loves police procedurals. It's what it's what people show up for. So you know, like I have no inside information. I don't have any more idea of what it's going to be than you guys do. But I think it's, you know, I think it's a franchise that's rife with possibilities, and also, you know, it has the ability to present a bunch of different characters, and you get to pick the one you like. You get to pick, you know, certainly in the comics, you get to pick Hal or Jon Stewart or Alan Scott or Kyle or Guy Gardner or Jessica Cruz or Simon Boz, or, you know, any of the 3 or 4 new ones that have just been introduced.
Mm-hmm. Or you can even go like Kilowog and be like, hey, let's do a whole issue about him. So we talked to Phil about yesterday about how when these things try to break into the mainstream, a lot of times people in executive spots try to get rid of the weird. And Green Lantern, like you just had said, Grant Morrison and Liam Sharp are obviously doing a series where they'll make it as crazy as they want it to be, and it can be that, and it's not sanitized to just being a show about some people in space or superheroes in space. Do you think Green Lantern needs to have a little bit of the weird to work?
Oh yeah, I mean, it should be, you know, it should ultimately be, you know, the comics version of Star Wars, right? It should be, you know, Marvel certainly has its Star Wars with Guardians, and it certainly had, you know, will be adding to that with Eternals, I suspect. The DC cosmic end of things really hasn't really shown up, I think, as they would want it to. So I you know, I think it should be, I think it should be out there, but I think it should be grounded too. It's got to be, like, you have to care about the characters. Guardians of the Galaxy works because you care about those characters, despite the, you know, the cosmic setting and all of the over the top stuff that goes on with them. You know, you care about that damn raccoon, and that's why you're invested in the movie. Green Lantern has to be the same thing. You have to care about the characters in order to show up every week. And I think it's almost more important in a television setting than it is in a film setting, because you want the audience to have that repeat behavior. You know, you want them to watch the first one and come back for the second one and the third one and the fourth one, because they're interested in what happens to these people that they care about now. And that's really the same sort of storytelling we do in comics, and we've done in comics forever. You get a dose every month, and if the dose is good enough, the audience comes back the next month.
I mean, one could even say that the prior Green Lantern movie, that's what it suffered from, was getting rid of that weird and trying to make it more real, especially like with the costume. It's like they're like, oh no, don't put spandex on. I'm like, let's make it energy instead.
Well, failure's an orphan, success has many fathers. Yeah. So, you know, you don't want to point the finger at anybody or anything on Green Lantern. It just, I think one of the tough things was, I don't think the audience, the way Hal was presented in the film, I don't think the audience ever really liked him enough.
Yeah.
You know, he's kind of a jerk. The first time we see him, he's in bed with a hot blonde. I mean, like, people respond to Peter Parker because they see themselves in Peter Parker. You know, he's got romantic troubles. He's worried about paying the rent. He can't get a date for Friday night. Hal Jordan's pretty, he's got it pretty good so far, even without the ring, right?
Yeah.
Test pilot, getting the babes. So I think that's a tougher sell to have the audience empathize with you. And I think the other thing that happens very often in big budget Hollywood movies is that, like, there was the explainer sequence right up front where it says, here's the Green Lantern Corps, and here's all of this amazing cosmic stuff, and here's the information download we think you need. Where I think it would have been much more effective to have Hal be your point of view character, and you discover all of that crazy cool stuff through him. Like, your amazement at discovering that this stuff exists is sort of run through the prism of Hal experiencing that. So I think that you see that a lot in Hollywood movies, where usually there's some sort of executive meeting where somebody says, well, I don't understand all this. I need it. You should explain it better in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I love the John Carter of Mars books from Edgar Rice Burroughs, and wrote the comic for a while. And I love the movie that Andrew Stanton made, except for the opening sequence where there's just like, oh, here's cool stuff and flying ships and warriors, and this is all the political situation. Like, all of that stuff is totally front loaded into the first 5 minutes of the movie, and it prevents you from like getting into the movie through the characters, which I think is always more effective. So, I see that stuff in a movie and I just go, there was a meeting around a big conference room table, and somebody said, I don't understand this, explain it better.
Well, it's not a creative decision, because you'd rather save that stuff to be part of your story, like, and have material for the story, rather than be like, here's all my stuff right away, like, get into this. And now you have to...
It's in some ways it's the same argument of like, what do you show in a trailer?
Yeah.
Like, do you show all the cool stuff in a trailer to get people to show up to the movie, or do you save the cool stuff, and not show it in the trailer, and hope people show up, and then they're dazzled by the things that are surprises to them. But we sort of live in a media world now where the instinct is show everything you got and just get people into the theater, or get people to pay the download fee or whatever.
To your point about Green Lantern having that exposition kind of download, I think also with the character, I think you're correct, is that he starts off as arrogant, obviously, as like this cool kind of guy, and then he gets powers and turns into a hero. But the switch is as quick, I feel like it's a download of character instead, and you're supposed to be like, oh, look, and he's now changing, rather than seeing the change. It really is kind of like a quick flip. And that basically it's that same scene where you get that exposition download. It's like, oh, and now he cares about people. So
he knows all this stuff. Look, I mean, to me, it's amazing that with the number of people that are involved in a film, the vast number of creative people, and the number of people who have input that are creative and not creative, and the vast amount of money that gets spent on a movie. I mean, it's stunning to me that any movie comes out and is good. Because once you've seen a little bit of how that sausage is made, you just scratch your head and go, man, like how does something like Blade Runner 2049 come out, and just to me just blows me away every time I look at it. And it's not an idiot simple movie. It asks something of the audience. And I think it's much more successful because of that. I mean, I'm excited about Dune because obviously the same director, and a number of the actors that director's worked with previously. It just looks like it looks like it's right up my alley. And I saw a number of people on social media, kind of like people who were not familiar with Dune, just kind of saying, I don't know what this is. I don't know what this story is. This is just a bunch of cool looking stuff, which I think this is a teaser trailer.
Yeah.
It just looks cool. I'm assuming there will be more trailers that will tell you who these people are and what's going on and why you should care, to hopefully get us all into a theater in December. But I guess that remains to be seen, whether we actually have that. Awesome. Have that opportunity or not.
And the thing is, it's based on a book. You can look online what it's about if you really want to look it up.
Yeah, but I don't feel like anybody should ever, reading a comic, nobody should have to go to Wikipedia and to figure out what's going on. That information should be layered into the story, and that's really how we approached Endless Winter. Is if you need to know it, it's in the story, somehow, some way. Through dialogue, through the visuals, you're going to find out the things that you need to know to have the story be meaningful to you. That's just the craft of what we do, and I think sometimes that craft is lost a little bit because we have those other tools available.
Now you mentioned that so with like a big movie like that, right? There's obviously a lot of people involved, a lot of decisions that have to be made by a lot of people, right? And so I would say that this, you guys, now you're part of this event kind of comic with so many people involved, and then also we have the situation which you have to, like you said, send an email or do a Zoom call. Do you feel like that's as cumbersome, or is that actually easier to do in the comic kind of world?
When you agree to do a 9-part superhero story that's a big crossover between a bunch of titles,
yeah,
that's part of the process. Like if you think, if you're under the impression that you're just going to come in and take over all the Justice League books for a month and do whatever you want, and nobody's going to be looking over your shoulder, you are sorely mistaken. That's not how creator owned, corporately owned comics work, particularly superhero icons that are frankly worth billions of dollars thanks to their media footprint on other platforms. You that going into it, that to a certain extent, it's not my first rodeo. Like I've done crossovers. I did Marvel versus DC. I've done a bunch of these sort of large scale projects, and I think there's a certain skill to navigating them in terms of what goes on behind the scenes, and you have to be able to to roll with the punches, and some stuff that we planned on early when in the formative process of this, and talked about with editorial, and we okay, let's do this with this character, and a week or two later a decision is made somewhere else that okay, that's not a possibility anymore. What can we do instead of that? So you have to be fairly agile in terms of adjusting to which way the wind's blowing on certain characters, and it's just you like I said, that going in, and it's part of the process. So there's no sense in in fighting it. You just you stick to what you think works for the story, and the rest is details. The rest you work around the cards as they're dealt. And like I said, I think there's a skill to that. In okay, well, we were going to do this thing, but now we don't have that. What can we put in there that's going to get us the same sort of payoff, or that's going to have the same sort of impact?
Which, like you had mentioned before, that Andy also with the costume stuff at Marvel has probably been involved in that kind of situation before. So it's probably easier that not only do you guys have a relationship, but you both kind of had dealt with these kind of event type books before in the past. So
yeah, sure. And I think in a case like this, two heads are better than one. Because when you're thrown a curve, and you're gonna end up doing something different now than like on Thursday, you're going to do something different than you thought you were going to do on Tuesday. Andy and I get on a Skype call, and okay, what ideas do you have? I got nothing. What do you got? And so it helps. I think it helps to have another sounding board and another creative brain working to figure out how those, how that process works, how that map is eventually made.
So I'm going to go back, and you had talked about, and we actually talked about this with Phil. You had mentioned Blade Runner 2049 and Dune, and that those movies have those kind of moments that kind of make you care for the characters, and how a lot of some things miss the mark because they take those moments out because they think that they're boring. But that's what makes those characters relatable, and you care about them. It almost seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you said, like these 9 issues, right? Even though you're going to be going into these different characters kind of worlds, those moments you still wanted to be there. Like you wanted to make sure the moments felt right and weren't this true to the character.
Yeah, well, that's that's the job. That's part of the balancing act of big superhero action, crazy, glaciers covering the world, and our villain is called the Frost King, and he is at once he is part of this storm. The storm is him, So you have to do all the big deal stuff, but you also have to have the little quiet moments that that help the characters, that help the characters' depth in terms of what the readers see. And look, in a comic, there's not a lot of real estate. There are, most of the issues of this are 20 pages, so you have a finite amount of space to do what you need to do. And since it's a Justice League story, you want to check in with the Justice League in every issue, and see what the rest of them are doing. We've got flashback sequences in every issue, so that takes a chunk of your page count away. So it becomes an exercise in, all right, well, can we squeeze this 4-page sequence down to 3 pages because we need to steal a page and put it somewhere else in the issue. It's something of a logistical problem, and I think it's gone okay. I mean, we, like, every issue we've done, we felt like, oh man, if we only had another 5 pages. But I think that's a good sign. I think that's a sign that we squeezed a lot of story into the space that we have.
You had mentioned earlier that you love Superman, and so does Garrett over here. The Superman, what would you call yourself, Garrett? Super fan?
Yeah, super fan, sure.
And super fan?
Yeah, when I was reading the press releases for Endless Winter, I had my fanboy moment when I saw that the Frost King's lair is going to be the Fortress of Solitude. Well, where's that coming from? Like, that's pretty cool.
Well, the as Superman super fans would know, the Fortress of Solitude has been moved.
Yep.
To the Bermuda Triangle.
Mm-hmm.
So, without giving away too much, when you move something, there's a crater left behind. So this story starts in the Arctic. I can tell you that. And part of that is sort of the Fortress of Solitude being moved, and maybe things were left behind.
Wow. That's so cool, and we're talking, like, you're writing this, and we just talked to Phil, and of course he couldn't talk about that. He's drawing the Superman issue. Like, I'm so excited for that issue. Like, even that cover looks immaculate. Like, this just all seems so fun, and I heard that, and I was like, this is exactly the event that I'm, like, super excited for. Just, like, cool things that pay homage to the fans, but obviously you talked about that you can bring in new readers and get them up to speed. But what a cool time to, like, bring in an awesome event. Like, I'm so excited.
We love that Superman cover that Francis Manifold did. That's just, just execution wise, concept wise, it's just amazing. And the Superman issue was one of the ones that we got finished and then had to go back into it and rip out like 6 pages because it no longer worked, and put something else in there. And when we got done with it, we were much more satisfied with the new version than the older version. And again, I'm not going to tell you what exactly happens and what those 6 pages are and who might appear in those 6 pages, but we got to do a real Superman story. We got to get at the core of why he's Superman, and why he's Superman isn't because he's from another planet. He's the person he is why he's Superman. So we got to dig into some of that because we wanted to make sure that each issue has, particularly the individual issues of the series, Flash issue, the Aquaman issue, the Superman issue, that we dig into what makes these characters tick, and what are they like, how are they dealing with this struggle? How are they dealing with the world being covered in ice, and people being threatened, or people being under the threat of this weather event, this climate event, and how does Superman ditch Lois and go fight ice monsters? That's yes, that's comic book stuff, but we also wanted to get into, well, you know, how do you leave behind the person you love the most to go do that job? How, you know, how is that? How difficult is that for?
Which, I mean, to your point earlier, like in today's kind of world that we're in, like people are doing that, and it's not something that is heavy-handed. It's, that question was always there for Superman, but also like people can read it into it as much as they want to now and be like, yeah, like there are people, like I remember when this was first going on and New York was really hit bad, they were asking people from all over the country to go there and, you know, be a hero and, you know, leave their families behind to help people. And that, I mean, that's almost kind of the same thing. Like Superman has to be like,
Yeah.
hey.
I mean, people did. People got, you know, people came to New York by the plane load to work in the hospitals. Just amazing. And, you know, and be in harm's way. And then some of them lost their lives. So, like I said, yes, this is a big, fun superhero story, but some of the underpinnings of it is exactly that. Is, you know, what's the meaning of heroism in the time that we find ourselves right now.
So the Frost King is the villain of this story. Is that a totally original character that you guys came up with, or is it referenced to anything else that's happened before?
The Frost King is new. The Frost King is new, and we like him a bunch. Howard Porter, who was drawing the first issue and the last issue, and who has a bit of a Justice League pedigree. I think we would agree. So Howard did the designs on him, and it's just great looking stuff. And the Frost King will evolve through the series.
I think with a villain, and like you said, evolving. That's like for a villain. I think the hardest part when people create a villain is not to make it, you know, super on the nose. How was the creation of a villain? Like, how was that process to like come up with the bad person for this event?
I think if you set out to create a bad person, you're probably not doing the job right. Because I always think the most interesting villains are the ones who think they're the hero of their own story. They, you know, they're convinced of the righteousness of what they're doing. You know, Dr. Doom and Magneto are better villains than the Rainbow Raider. Luthor and Darkseid are great villains because of that, because they think they're right. So the Frost King, I think, again, without giving away too many specifics, I think the audience will sort of understand where the Frost King is coming from, and maybe empathize a bit with how he gets to the state that he's in when we come across him. And like I said, he will evolve over the course of both the flashback sequences and the contemporary sequences.
So you mentioned Howard Porter's doing the first and last issue, and in between we've seen from the solicits that came out today that obviously Phil's doing the Superman one. You have some other people doing the other ones. You had mentioned that, like with Phil, he had to draw that location, and then the other artist has to kind of make sure that it's kind of. How does that work with the artist side of things? Like, how are you involved? You and Andy involved with making sure the artists are kind of consistent on those type of things?
Well, obviously, you know, it's a group effort. I mean, the DC editorial is really doing the heavy lifting on this stuff. What, you know, our end of it is to make sure that when we put in a sequence that's also in another issue, that we let the artist know in the script, this is also being drawn, you know, by Phil Hester in Superman. So wait to draw this page until you get that reference, so that the artist doesn't just, you know, dig into the story and go, oh, I've got to draw a secret lab. I'll just make this up. So it's, you know, it's a lot of, you know, crossing T's and dotting I's to make sure it all matches up. And, you know, so far so good. Everybody's been on the ball. And also there's, you know, you as the writer can be aware of what you're, you know, that everything is going to be drawn at the same time and drawn by artists on, you know, like 3 or 4 different continents. It's not like these guys are all in the same studio. And,
yeah, that's what I was going to pull up. Actually, the list of artists is amazing.
We are very fortunate to be working with the kind of art talent that we are. So we wanted, we also wanted to keep in mind when we were writing the scripts, okay, like how do we make sure that we're not throwing roadblocks in front of the artists in terms of getting the pages done? How do we make sure that we're not gonna cause a holdup if somebody's got to wait for reference, or it's a bit of a balancing act, but again, it's just part of the job.
So you had mentioned that Francis Manapul. I just looked at a cover, and we love Francis Manapul as part of this show here. So, and you mentioned different continents, like everybody's all over the place. I mean, obviously now we've gotten used to the kind of collaboration through this kind of communication. What's it like working with somebody? Like, do you have direct contact with somebody that's like on the book, and you guys can talk it out, or are they really just getting your scripts and kind of just like going from there?
It's different for different artists. Some guys want to be in touch, and some guys, and I use I use guys as a non-gendered term here. Some artists, want to be in contact. Some just, get the script, and if they have questions, they ask the questions, and then they just go off and draw the issue. So it's different strokes for different folks. I like to be as collaborative as possible, and just at the beginning of the script, we always say, look, if there's something you want to talk about, or if there's something that you want to do differently, or if there's, if you have an idea for approaching a page that's different from what's in the script, let's talk about it. Let's figure out the best way to tell this story. And as long as we're telling the same story, everything's great. To me, that's the magic of the collaboration, is you're getting the creative output of not just 1 or 2 minds, but everybody involved in the process.
So Endless Winter in December from DC, you're working on, Ron. What else do we have, that you have coming out that people can look into?
Let's see. We just kickstarted Beast of the Black Hand 2 by me and Paul Harding and Matthew Dow Smith through Ominous Press. So I'm working on that. I'm doing a couple different things for heavy metal that have not been announced yet, but they might be announced by the time we actually run this. So pay attention to heavy metal. I really feel like they're the new crew that's come in and kind of taken over at heavy metal is doing some really interesting stuff, both in the magazine and in sort of regular monthly comics. There's exciting stuff going on there. And there's a list of what I'm doing around here somewhere, but I'm doing something for Aftershock that hasn't been announced yet, and a couple of projects that are still under wraps. So in this time of pandemic, in which there's no conventions, I'm not getting on a plane. I think I've been on a plane once this entire year, which is not the norm. That now that convention culture is sort of spread everywhere. I would love to do this show in person sometime when we can do shows in person. But because we're just all looking at the same 4 walls, there's a bunch of stuff on my plate, and so it's just it's every day's the same day. I said to somebody earlier today, I feel like it's I feel like it's March 172nd, not September, because it's just every day the same as every other day. But I've got plenty of stuff to keep me busy, and I'm enjoying all of it. So these are not complaints; these are just observations.
Well, like you mentioned, we're all going through it. Isolation is a big part of the Endless Winter, and so we'll all get to see that through the lens of superheroes in December, and also, take care of this Frost King. Maybe we'll see. what happens. But that's DC's Endless Winter, and starting the first week of December, right? The first issue comes out.
First week of December, running for, I think December is a 5-week month. So
and before 2021, you'll know what happens.
It's our Christmas gift to you.
And we're very much looking forward to it. Thank you for joining us, Ron. For Garrett, do you have any questions, Garrett? Oh, you looked at the screen like you wanted. Oh,
I don't know. I was just paying attention, but I was just one last question about Endless.
Yeah.
You're wrapping up the last couple issues. Is there something, without obviously giving too many spoilers, maybe be very vague, is there something that's going to happen that's going to affect the DC universe going forward beyond its event?
Yeah, he said. There are threads that we're putting into the story that will be picked up and carried through in 2021 in various individual books. The story will be complete and have a sense of conclusion to it, but there will be character bits and a few aspects from different titles that are going to that we're hinting at or being a little bit more obvious about, so that this doesn't feel like it's just completely sealed off and it's a sort of one and done event and you don't have to pay attention to it anymore. There are things that will come out of this that are going to be picked up in 2021.
The question Garrett really wanted to ask you is who's writing Superman in 2021? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you know that. I want to know.
I might know some things.
Killing me.
Hey, who knows? By the time this drops, probably everybody knows. Who knows? But
the DC info dump today. My brain is still trying to wrap around everything. So.
Who knows? They might announce it tomorrow. They got a DC thing going on tomorrow, so who knows?
Yeah.
Once again, thank you, Ron, for Garrett, for Alex, and for SiouxperCon. My name is Marvin from Wednesday Comics Podcast, and we will see you guys. Have fun at the con. Hashtag, what is it? Stay connected?
I think.
Thank you, Ron. Have a good day. Thank you.